meeting to order. First is the agenda review and adoption. Council in front of us is the agenda. And we have one item on it. It's Pinecone Regional Park EDA property discussion. Look for a motion.
Make a motion.
There's a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Carrie.
All right, good evening, everyone. The only item, as you stated, is discussing our Pinecone Road EDA lot that we have. Rob, if you could jump to the next slide, thank you. As you can see here is just an overview of what I'm actually referring to. So it's our own EDA owned property. It's zone B2, our general business district. The overall lot size is 2.4 acres. However, from wetlands present on the property, it makes the buildable area around 1 acre. We did complete a wetland delineation in 2021, which is good for 5 years, so that just helps from a development perspective see where those actual wetlands are identified and establishing setbacks from that. Throughout the years, we've had multiple interested parties come to us, staff members, seeing this lot, and or we're referring them to this lot as identified properties for development. We are aware that we most likely will have to sell this property for $1 or have expressed this due to the lot constraints and challenges that are present on this property outside of just the wetlands I've discussed. You can see on here the green is our sanitary sewer. That is a force main along Pinecone Road. And then water's along Pinecone Road, and then in the very left side there is sanitary sewer and water as well, and I'll get into that on the next slide. So some of those challenges I discussed, there's wetlands, sewer extension, partial roadway improvements of First Street South there, and then elevation issues as well. So as discussed, there's wetlands there. Wetland setback variance would be required. Part of this, if the wetland is over 5 acres, there's a 20-foot buffer. If it's under, there's a 10-foot buffer. So we know that generally with any development on this property, we will see a variance request for that. Sewer extension would need to be from the very left side of this picture here from 12th Avenue South, because as I stated, it is a force main along Pinecone Road. However, in the past, if you can recall, scooters did access our sanitary sewer via the force main. We did some modeling with their flows and determined that was viable, and they accessed the sewer from that force main. But if that is not a possibility, depending on the development, they will have to extend that sewer from 12th Avenue South, and that's $217,000 roughly from our engineering estimates. On top of that, we would request or require entrance upgrades onto First Street South. That was not designed for a development access there, and they would also have to add in their access to the development there because that would be the primary access. And then with that, there would be some wetland impacts, but we can work through that as the time comes. But with the upgrades needed for that, that would be approximately $246,000 from our estimates. And then elevation improvements, it's roughly 3 feet lower than what would be needed from any development perspective if you're planning on building on that property. So that's approximately $200,000 of improvements in that alone. So with all those together, you're looking over $660,000 just to make the site developable and have utility access. And I'll go into a solution that we came up with from a staff perspective. So like I stated, 3 feet of fill is needed to bring to the site to get to that appropriate elevations. If you're driving by, you can kind of notice that where blue line is, it's a little bit higher. That's about where it needs to be. An option that we would propose, or have thought of is using some of our materials from our upcoming city projects. We have excess fill and materials that could be utilized and used on this site. As I stated, the overall improvements were estimated at $200,000 for the elevation alone. At least half of that we would say is material costs, so the actual material to bring that up to the grade that we would need. So if this was a project that the city would want to undertake, we could save potentially half by using our materials from our projects we already have planned. However, there is still that remainder $100,000 that the city would then have to pay for. So there is still some other upfront costs for labor, materials, trucking, things like that that we'd still have to account for. So finally, I get to the real reason why we're discussing this, and we have multiple times before. Rob, if you go to the following slide. Really, we want to see and get some guidance of where this ranks for a priority list for Sartell and the EDA. We do have some other properties, mill site obviously. Part of the mill site, we acquired 13 acres along West Bridgeport. That's primarily for single family development. And then we have other properties tied to first right of refusal with Niron along 4th Avenue South. So we don't have a whole lot of properties left. However, these improvements are not in any capital improvement plan and unaccounted for at this time. So there would be some opportunity cost from other projects that we'd have to pull that remainder $100,000 approximately from. So staff, myself, is looking for guidance of, do I keep telling people about this property knowing that there's all these issues and most likely them saying that's a lot of money before I even talk construction? Or is it not on our priority list at this time and maybe at a later time it is? For a similar project, Central Soda just down Pinecone Road was sold just a few years back, and they had similar elevation issues. And that was estimated to be about that $100,000 to $200,000 range, and that was sold for $1. So just put that into perspective, because that had site improvements. We saw the need to sell it for $1 because of that. However, as I stated, this property has numerous issues on top of just the elevation. So looking for feedback from you guys on where do we go from here.
And for clarification on the one that Central Soda built on, if my memory serves right, it was less of the elevation and more of there's really poor soils. When it was backfilled there, it was, I'll call it junk soil that had to be taken out and replaced. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay.
They had to remove most of the soil there and replace
Yep.
with what's there currently.
And with that as well, this property, anything with the soil issue there?
To my knowledge, we haven't done any soil sampling, but I wouldn't anticipate anything like Central Soda had. However, we can't accurately state that. We haven't done any sampling, but no matter what, if bad soils, now they would have to have more costs into that too, or we would, depending on who takes on that.
I don't know that in my mind, it's a fair comparison, this one to that one. Yes, soil-wise, sure, but this one's adjacent to, or is part of a park, right? Is adjacent to others. That one, the city had gotten back through some wetland issues with a previous owner of an adjacent property, and really a standalone island property that wasn't part of any other property that the city owns.
No, you're correct on that. It was more so of a statement of, we have sold property for $1 before.
Yep.
And there's reasons
From a valuation perspective, I think they're comparable.
Yep.
And council just, I mean, Pat, this has probably been a topic, that parcel back when you served last, and it continues to be. My take on it is I don't like the city competing with the market from a real estate perspective. We are on the 4th Avenue and for multiple reasons there. But anyone looking for a small parcel in Sartell, there's enough available out there from the private sector, businesses, developers looking to sell. I don't know, I think there's, at one point we looked at putting a high-end basketball, the Tommy Beerson courts were planned there at one point, which I thought would have been a great use of the site. High visibility, low cost of having to do some of the build out. But look for other thoughts. Jed?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I like that we're looking at it. I don't know if I'd want to add something to the budget right now from an expense perspective. So if we were here with an actual proposal, I'd be open to considering the dollar if we knew what the site was going to look like, and if we had other projects going on at the same time, I'd be more than happy to donate the fill, right, to sell the property and do some of those things. But I don't know if I'd proactively want to go out with our priorities, which I think is mainly their question, right? Like, I know it's only 100,000, but 100,000 adds up when we have all these other projects right now for me to commit to that, unless we had a specific project with a specific kind of, hey, we want to move in there, but we need you guys to do this for us to move in there. I would be open to considering it, but not proactively without a planned site.
That makes sense. I did want to say, we do have an interested party. We have requested further information, like a third-party appraisal of the property to really get what is that property worth. And then they're evaluating some options. So in the future, there may be an actual request of donating that fill or materials, things like that, or paying for that. But they don't have anything formally that they can submit that here's what it's going to look like.
Yeah, and I think for me, to a little bit of the open market comment earlier of, I'd rather have them research all of the properties. This is the one we want. Comparing, this is what per foot square footage is selling at these other properties. We obviously know this is a pretty awesome location next to Blue Line, next to the hockey arena and some of that stuff. And really looking at, hey, this is a nice property. This is what we would need to come in there, where we don't have to make all those exceptions up front. Versus saying, hey, if you're interested, we're willing to work with you, but we need to understand financially what does that mean.
I'll jump on some of Jed's comments there. If we're gonna have $100,000 in value of fill, let's retain that. We've got property on 4th Avenue. If we could retain that fill, right, it's not gonna go bad. We could utilize it at a future point as needed, or from a donation perspective, and or sell it. But if your question is, should we actively be marketing this? And then that's maybe what I heard, is I don't think so. I think 4th Avenue and the mill site is where we want to put our energy from hey, if you want to build on a city-owned property today, there. Any other feedback on that?
No, I would agree with you on that, Ryan. And I mean, just, I think you said, where should this rank in our priority list? I think it should rank pretty low. It's a difficult site, and it's going to require a lot of improvements. And I guess I just don't see us, I agree. I don't want to put $100,000 into it. And yeah, when he said it's been a problem for a while, there's a reason it hasn't ever been developed. And I think it's going to be the type of business that can fit on that site is to have those development costs up front. I mean, it's a small site. I think it's gonna be a very difficult one. So I don't think this should be a priority for marketing.
Have we thought about pickleball?
Yes, pickleball, the different amenity maybe is in the future for this property. I think it's very important, as you've stated, return on investment. If we put $100,000 into it, we would like to see that return from a tax-based standpoint and development perspective. I think the worst case scenario would be sticking that money into it and seeing it sit for years on end, and now we're having the same discussion later. So from what I'm understanding, this ranks pretty low on our priority list as of today, and maybe in the future we'll come back to it. if there's formal plans in place and agreements.
Yeah, and one other thought I have on that is, First Street South and then, Central Park Boulevard are two roads that the city has done historically that don't actually meet city specs.
Correct.
And when Shields has a event going on, that is a very challenging intersection, so I also think it'd be wise for us to retain that parcel as we figure out in the future, what is First Street South? What do we need to do there to help traffic flow, and improve that roadway? So. Council, anything else, feedback wise?
I'm good, thank you.
Alright. Council, look for a motion to adjourn our EDA meeting.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
Motion and a second, all in favor? We're adjourned.